We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we're covering the third episode for the Book of Boba Fett. Sarah is going to be covering the story element, or the plot, I should say, for us, and then we'll get into some of our thoughts. So what happened this week, Sarah?
All right, so we start out with somebody visiting Boba and Fennec, saying that somebody's stealing their water. It's this biker gang. So, of course, he goes out to investigate, and it's this group of, I'm going to call them teenagers with, like, souped-up mopeds is kind of what it looks like. But they basically say that they're stealing because the prices are too high and they don't have jobs, so he offers to have them come work for him, and he tells the guy to lower his prices because his prices are way too high. So now we've got this biker gang that are going to help support Boba. That was kind of our introductory scene. Next, we have he goes to visit the Pikes to collect the debt owed to the Tusken Raiders for protecting the Dune Sea for their runs. And they basically say, well, we already have somebody else that we're paying, so we don't want to pay both teams. So Boba goes to investigate to see go take care of that other biker gang, which is separate from the moped biker gang, if you will. But what he finds instead is that he finds a group of Tusken Raiders that are all dead. The village is demolished and kind of smoking as if it had been on fire. So he lays them all to rest. There's, I don't know, maybe 10 or so in the body pile. So it's clearly not all of the Tusken Raiders, but we don't know what happened to the other tribes. They don't really investigate that much further. But obviously that, doesn't sit well with him. We fade to another scene of him in the Bacta tank, and they kind of do a flashback to his childhood. But what wakes him up from the Bacta tank is the hired Wookiee, the Wookiee that the Hutt twins had hired. And he's pulling him out of the Bacta tank, and so we've got a pretty interesting fight scene. Of course, the moped biker gang come and join and aid in the fight, and then we've got the Gamorrean guards aid in the fight, and finally Fennec is able to throw him into the Rancor pit so that he's trapped. So now we've got that hired Wookiee trapped as our prisoner. The Hutt twins actually come and pay a visit to Boba and give him a Rancor as a gift, and tell him that war is bad for business and they don't want to fight, and somebody else is coming who's worse, and that the mayor promised to the Pikes that they could have the gang territory, or the crime territory, if you will. So kind of our last two scenes that kind of go hand in hand here is obviously visiting the mayor's office, trying to figure out why the land was promised to somebody else, and the mayor is nowhere to be found. So we have a biker chase trying to find the mayor's right-hand man, if you will. Twi'lek, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we got a chase scene going through the streets there. Eventually they find him, and he says that the mayor is not around anymore because he's dealing with the Pikes, right? So our last scene kind of closes out with the Pikes arriving. So one of the moped people tell him that the Pikes are there. So that's about the extent of the episode.
Did you mention the Wookiee went free?
I did not mention that part.
Okay.
Yep, they let the Wookiee free.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So you see him run off into the space.
Somewhere.
Yeah, I really wondered, is he going to go with the Hutts, or is he running somewhere else? It's, a lot of desert to be just running in a random place. But yeah, so there's some other little small tidbits that we'll get into in a little bit. that were in this episode, because there were some kind of like off in the distance cool things that were happening. But Tony, what did you think of the episode?
So at this point, episode 3, we should probably start acknowledging the larger discourse around this show. And that is, I haven't been hearing universally good things about this show compared to, say, The Mandalorian. And because I'm an inquisitive guy, I, read reviews and things like that to figure out why exactly this show isn't quite clicking. And I'm talking very general. I'm not doing like the small, minute points in every episode, but the biggest complaint seems to be that the show seems directionless and it doesn't have a single through line, and it's just kind of a series of things happening. And I don't necessarily disagree per se, and I can certainly see where people would come to that conclusion. They are doing things a little different. They did kind of take some swings with some creative choices and things like that. And it might not work for some people, and that's cool. However, speaking for myself, because that's the point of this recording here, this video, I am still enjoying it. Like I said, sure, some things might be kind of weird for some people. I get it. But overall, I'm buying into the overall thing of this show, and that's explaining where Boba came from, first of all, and how he's adjusting to being the new boss of this underworld. And I remember I said in the first video that we are going to see how he adjusts with his new position. Some people are going to try to take advantage of him. Things are going to happen. And I expected all those things to come about. Like, the show is more or less playing out how I thought it would. And now at the end of this episode, it's very clear that he is going to go to war with the Pikes. And I think that's really cool and super excited to see that. But yeah, overall, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still vibing with it. I can understand people not liking the Power Rangers looking bikes with the teenagers and all that stuff. And I get that, and that's fair. But personally, I don't usually let those small details drag me down if I'm vibing with the overall thing.
Right.
I think that's a pretty good point. If you think of, the last season we watched, A Bad Batch, there was a lot of episodes like that where it was kind of 1 or 2 episode mini sessions, if you will, where they went somewhere, they did something, and then they came back, and that was the whole episode, or that was 2 episodes together, and it didn't really have anything to do with the overall arc of the major story. So it's not something we haven't seen before in Star Wars, where they kind of don't have a major storyline, I guess, but I feel like this has more of a storyline than that did, at least at that point in time.
To try to like bridge between the two things that you guys were talking about, because Tony, you had mentioned that it seems that there's not really a straight story going on here. It's kind of all over the place. Thinking about how Star Wars has been handled, with Disney, I think I'm not willing to judge it quite yet that way until I see the whole product. And the reason why I say that is because with the films, it was clear that it was different people writing different things and they were clashing. Whereas the Book of Boba is handled by the same people as The Mandalorian. And, there could be something in this, at the end of this series, that this is all being a part of, and we just don't know it yet.
Yeah, I don't necessarily subscribe to that criticism. I'm just saying that is what is being said.
Sure.
And yeah, I'm completely with you. I'm still into it. I'm still enjoying it, and yeah, once the whole series is, or at least this season, if we'll do more, I don't know. Once it's all done and it's a coherent story, then we can start, picking it
Yeah.
apart that way. Yeah, I agree.
I was a little surprised at the backlash from the episode. Like when I first watched it, I was the only thing I really wasn't big on was how the bikes looked. That was about it. Um, we had this little bit of a teenager type thing going on with the story and seeing how that was going to play out. But I remember, I think it was either Wednesday night or Thursday morning, and I turned on, just to see what people were thinking, and it was just all bad. I didn't see one person like it. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's interesting to see how the masses are responding to it and how we're responding to it, where we're just kind of casually watching it week to week and seeing what happens. I
Hmm.
will add on to I wouldn't say there's discontinuity, or if that's the word, with the story. I would say there's a little bit of an inconsistency of um, Boba's perspective, maybe, because there's sometimes where it seems like Boba is going hard on people, and then there's other times where it seems like he's soft. And I feel like there's a little bit too much of bouncing back and forth on that, as opposed to the overall story having a issue. I don't know.
That's completely fair. I don't disagree. I would maybe lump that in with what I was saying. Like he's still trying to figure out how to rule. Like, does he want to be harsh? Does he want to be soft? And he's kind of trying both things. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking way too much into it, and it really is bad writing. I don't know, but that's how I'm going to choose to think about it.
Yeah. I do remember before this show started that Robert Rodriguez, which is one of the directors of the episodes, had mentioned that this series is going to be, over the top and insane. And one of the rumors that was like tagged on to that statement was about him riding a Rancor. So that was how they were setting the expectations. And we can see in this episode that that could become a possibility very quickly. And,
He straight up said, "I want to ride the Rancor."
yeah, so we might get something as exciting as that, but maybe the slow burn is a little bit of an issue for people, so to speak.
Yeah.
I thought this fight scene where he gets pulled out of the back to tank and one by one his like minions, if you will, came to help. Like first the biker gang came to help, then the Gamorrean guards came to help, and then finally Fennec showed up. It seemed a little slow, if you will, kind of matching what we said before, where the fights were almost choreographed. Not saying that this looked choreographed, but it just looked too staged, I guess. How it was one after another coming to help.
I think staged is the right word because they're all choreographed, but it wasn't more of a I put my arm up, you hit me here. I put my arm there, you hit me there kind of a thing. It looked more when it's
The fight looked fluid. It's just weird how the people came in, to me at least.
the only thing that I noticed from the fight scene, and this was, I don't know if you call it nitpicky, but it was very specific because we had wondered, um, the girl from the biker group like stabbed the Wookiee, and we had wondered, how fatal that was. And in the next shot, her blade looks like there was no blood on it, or I don't know the color of Wookiee blood.
I think I noticed that too. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the Beauty and the Beast thing, like where Gaston stabbed the Beast and there was nothing on his blade too. So I wonder if that's like a Disney thing.
Probably.
But yeah, because it seemed like, where she stabbed him would have been pretty fatal, but not too sure on that one.
Well, Boba had his hand chomped on pretty hard by Wookiee teeth, which I gotta imagine are sharp. And, when he came out and he was putting his robe back on, I don't remember noticing anything of like blood dripping or like a towel wrapped around his hand or anything remotely similar to show that his hand was majorly hurt like that. Because it's one thing to get like punched or something, but to have your hand chomped on like that, ugh.
So maybe they're missing some of the minor details, which could have happened. They had a very small time frame to make this show, so I mean I could see that happening.
Hmm.
What
I think
were your thoughts? Because one of the biggest things that I heard about this episode, people not being fond of, was the chase scene. What was your thoughts on the chase scene and how that was put together?
So that was another thing that I knew was a complaint before I watched the episode. So I went in knowing people had an issue with it. And again, was it done like perfectly? Was it done in a way that audiences commonly know chase scenes to play out? No. And if you didn't like it, I understand. My thought though was that the town is a very closed in tight, like the roads are very tight. So you can't like just speed through town. That would
Right.
be you know. Um so yeah, does a slow chase like that to some people look silly? Sure. I can completely understand that. But personally, that was my thought of like, oh yeah, it's really tight quarters. They really can't go that fast. And I thought it was fine. It didn't detract for me at all.
I liked the painting of Jabba kind of being smashed. I thought it was a really cool painting. It was like a cool little, I don't know if you'd call it an Easter egg, but like a nod to the ruler before. But maybe it was symbolizing, he's gone now and we're breaking, the
I'm
norm.
sure that's what that was. Yeah, that was probably a conscious choice.
I liked it.
One thing that I really didn't like outside of what I've already mentioned was the little joke at the end where he said, keep an eye on it. I didn't think anything of that and of the joke part of it, but they made it so upfront and making you realize it was half of a joke. What did you feel that was kind of awkward?
Remind me of that.
So they, after the one guy had saw the pikes, he was reporting to Boba and Fennec about, hey, they're here. And he was the guy that had the piece over his eye, so there was just the one
Oh,
eye.
yeah.
And Boba was like, keep an eye on it. And then there was a couple of seconds that went by, and he was like, I apologize, it's a figure of speech. But neither one of them really showed, a reaction to it until Boba said something.
Yeah.
I thought it was a little awkward.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't really think too much about that. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
One last cool thing that I want to point out from this episode is when Boba was when it was showing his flashbacks and he was going to see the Pikes. One of the cool little nods to the Mandalorian that we got to see was, so Boba was going through the streets like this on the camera, and then like over here off in the distance was the lady that babysat Grogu when Mando showed up. You could tell by her fro and the
Oh, yeah.
fit droids.
The mechanic
Yep.
droids,
Yeah.
which we saw again later in the episode, one of them during the street chase.
Yeah. Ended up getting hit by one of, I forget who hit him, but they got like grazed by one of the speeders. Is there anything else you guys want to say about the episode?
Overall, I think it was pretty good. It's not the best, but I think I'm kind of right in line with Tony, where I can appreciate it as a whole. And really, I watched it twice now, and so there's things that I'm picking up from the first one things that I picked up the second time that I didn't pick up the first time. I don't know. I don't really have anything that's majorly, oh, this ruined it for me. So I think it's good.
Yeah, and I think this might be a good thing to close with. I mean, first of all, even if it's not done well, I still enjoy being in the world of Star Wars and consuming that, and that's always fun. But I'll kind of close with this. I am equating the execution of this show similarly to how people felt about the Martha scene from Batman versus Superman. Have you two seen that at all, or do you know what that is?
I've seen the movie, but it's been a long time.
Okay, so Batman and Superman were fighting, and Batman uses like kryptonite weapons and things, and like gets Superman pinned down on the ground, and he's about to stab him with a kryptonite spear, and Superman says, "Save Martha," which is Superman's Kansas mom's name, and that's Batman's mom's name. So so that made him stop, and he kept going like, "Why did you say that name?" And it was like a whole thing, and people hated that scene. Like they thought it was they thought it was like silly, and like everyone's like, "Oh, their moms are both named Martha." So once I started seeing all the discourse around the show, I immediately thought of that scene, in that the purpose of that scene was to was for Batman to realize how human Superman actually is, despite him being an alien. Because Batman like hated Superman in that movie, and despised him and thought he was just like a rogue alien WMD. But once he realized like, oh, he has a mother that he loves, and it happens to be the same name as my mom, then he realizes how human he is. So bringing it back to Boba Fett, so the Martha scene was executed kind of goofy. Like if you said I didn't like that scene because it was goofy, I get it, respect, all the respect in the world for that. It was executed a little goofy, I admit, but the message and the goal of that scene, I thought, was very impactful and powerful, right? And that's how I'm kind of feeling like Boba Fett is going. Are some things goofy? Is some of the dialogue kind of strange? Are some kind of the scenes staged kind of awkwardly? Sure, that is definitely an argument that can be made. And if that's what you want to go with, more power to you, full respect. All film is subjective. But I would encourage people, and this is just kind of my perspective, like we've been talking about, is look at the bigger picture, right? Like try to look at it as a whole, try to look at the show holistically, and don't get too bogged down with kind of some of the goofiness. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think, being 3 episodes into it, we can really, judge it to be wrong, so to speak, for Boba yet. And, it's not like it's episode 3 and we know there's 16 episodes like we did with Bad Batch, and, we have to strap in, sort of a thing. I think very quickly it could, flip a switch and end up being really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, him going to war with the Pikes, like that could be awesome.
Yeah.
Like gangs in New York stuff going on.
All of the pieces are getting into place, and
yeah.
I think we're about at the halfway point. So there's still a lot of film to cover. So I'm excited.
Me too.
I was going to say, one of the things that I liked was at the end of the chase scene where Boba came down on his jetpack, and we saw him like in his full suit of armor actually using his jetpack. That I thought was pretty cool. And so I'm hoping that, being at the tail end of the episode, maybe we'll see more of that next episode.
Yeah. I will say one of my main criticisms from the beginning of the show was wanting to see more of the modern day as opposed to the past. It's starting to equal out. I'm starting to feel a little more of, okay, what's going to happen here in the past? Because it's getting more and more interesting. So I feel like that's the way this whole show is going, is it's pulling me in more and more. And I think that's a little unfortunate that it's pushing people further away. But yeah, so we'll go ahead. We'll wrap it up here. So that was our thoughts on the 3rd episode of the Book of Boba Fett. So stay tuned for next week when we discuss episode 4. I am very much looking forward to it. And the way you can make sure that you are alerted when that drops is by turning on your notifications. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, drop us a like if you like this video, and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on the 3rd episode of the Book of Boba Fett. Before we go, I want to say thank you to Tony for being with us, and Sarah, of course. And we'll see you guys next time. See ya.